All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the first After Hours podcast of the 2023 season. We're very excited to bring this one your way. If you've been following us on social media, you've probably seen that a big deer hit the ground, courtesy of Owen Reigler. We've got Mike Reed joining us tonight, Drake Lamb, Owen himself, Justin Lubrecht, and Ryan Ludwig. Before we get into the action, roll through this intro, and then we're going to bring the story your way. How's the hunting been? Who wants to start first? Mike, I hear we got an update on a big deer. Maybe daylight tonight.
An update? What's Ryan saying to you guys? Yeah, we've been stubbornly hunting this one spot. Every day I struggle to go back to the same spot, but you know, we go back and forth. Ryan and I are talking about a lot every day about where the best place to maybe catch up with him early is, and we stick to that turnip plot. There's one other little clover plot. I mean, it's not 40 yards across, just a little nothing plot. And anyway, we got out tonight. Had a nice hunt. We're seeing lots of deer, 10 to 15 deer, young bucks, does, sparring, just kind of messing around, enjoying the cooler weather. And anyway, get out tonight and get home, and some of the cameras, you know, start sending photos, and there DK was in daylight on the clover plot. So he wasn't very far from us, but you know, that wetlands, it's that tall grass, so you can't see super far. But anyway, it's cool to see him actually daylight. The last picture we had of him in daylight was, I don't know, Ryan, what do you think? Was it was
probably like September 28th,
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago, just about. Yeah. So anyway, it's cool to see him. You know, he's not spending very much time on the farm. There's a couple cameras that he gets on every couple of nights, and we went out yesterday, put out a few more to try to get him patterned, and I picked him up last night right after we set some out on a couple of them. So I've got a little bit of an idea of what he's doing. I think I'm going to have to be a little patient, let the crops come out, get him to move into the farm a little bit more, and then we'll probably have a little better success. But I wish I was here the next few days and could maybe go sit that clover plot. But it's time to get back to work, and then my brother's getting married in Utah, so I'm flying out. So I'm going to be out of town for a little bit. But we'll give him a break. We don't want to kill him too fast like Owen.
Yeah. We had a late visitor here. Lee Abraham just joined us. Sounds like somebody had a good encounter tonight. A giant.
Yeah, he was bigger than I thought. I had him at 50 yards. Much bigger than Lochness, that's for sure.
That's awesome, man. That's one big deer, Lee.
I'm not sure how big he was, but I'm sure he was bigger than Lochness, by at least a half inch. But yeah, it came out really early. Like I was on a creek bed by a kill plot and surrounded by corn, and he just came out in that creek bed, and I bet he went in bed at 50 yards from there. Popped up, and like just was really just stagnant, really slow moving. Just you know, nothing, not very purposeful. Just took his time and just lazy. You know, just eating acorns off the creek bed. And then I thought he was gonna work right to where I see him on camera. And then he just went back right to where he came from. I mean, he was there for 2 or 3 minutes, probably 5 minutes actually. 50 yards, no shot, and just you know, I thought he was gonna do what he was supposed to do. Just as they do, they went back to where he came from for no particular reason. And I thought he bedded back down, was going to come back up, but the rest of the evening was pretty slow. So good to see him. Like I said, much bigger than the trail cameras gave him credit for. So that's always fun.
Hopefully that's the case with DK. I know, Drake, you were also hunting this evening. Saw a giant, a potential target for next year down there, but that's 3 mature bucks on their feet in daylight, which hasn't happened in a while. Why do you guys think, you know, we're a couple of days after the front? You always hear about the day before the front, day after. You know, how many days are we now? 3 days later? Is there any theories as to why the movement was so good tonight?
I think it's supposed to heat up tomorrow. I mean, up into the mid 70s. I mean, and I think the wind's supposed to switch. So I assume, you know, the deer probably keyed in on that a little bit. But
Owen,
guys,
Man, I really don't have any theories, Josh. You know, nice cool north wind. I mean, you got to be out there. I always say you got to give yourself a chance, you know.
Mm.
No reason they shouldn't be moving. It's another way to look at it.
Yeah, and yesterday wasn't. I mean, yesterday was good, but in the morning it was out of the south, and then we switched right back to north again, and it almost kind of rewound them up a little bit. I mean, it's cold out there. I mean, it's supposed to get down to 30s tonight. It's the pressure is not as high as it was a couple days ago, but it felt good. I was kind of going into this afternoon not with the highest hopes. I was like, I might go sit somewhere and just shoot does, and I'm like, man, it feels too good. We need to get up in his area again and just sit again, and sure enough, it was probably the closest we came to actually seeing him. So
I gotcha. Well, before we move on to the Lochness story, I want to share a video clip here of new dad Justin up there at the mustache. He also had a great encounter. And while I play this, Justin, I kind of want you to narrate what you were thinking as this was unfolding.
So that's
a familiar deer.
Yeah, so that's the Velveeta buck, but I was looking to the left. We had some what could be 3 or 4-year-olds that entered to my left that backdoored us, and I'm trying to open the window as he's coming. We got the main window open, except he goes to the left, and when I started opening that window, there was a doe right there. She kind of trotted off, and then you'll probably see here when he's walking in here, you can see the buck we called Nubbins. He's locked on me right away, and I was like, I can't do nothing about it. And Tyler's like, you got to go. And I was like, I can't. And here you go. Nubbins is right there. He's on us in the top where he was right there. And he's pushing him off. Right here's when I did get the window open. And, of course, he's walking straight away. And I wasn't about to rush anything here. But that deer is kind of like what Mike was saying. I hadn't had any pictures of him since September the 22nd. I was getting nervous about EHD because we do have cases of it. And I got a picture of him that morning going back to bed. And I was like, told Tyler, we got to be in there because he was doing exactly what he did last year. Sure enough, he come right off that ridge. And yeah, he got by me yet again. The same stand, same everything as last year. But I don't know why he's still in velvet like that. Something's really going on with him. He's always had velvet. That's why I've called him Velveeta. But this year here, he's full velvet still. I mean, it's starting to dry and it's starting to crack off, but I was shocked that he postured all them bucks off that field like that with it. So I'm just a little nervous that his tines are going to start breaking off because he's got to be brittle, I would think. But maybe y'all have seen something like that in the past where they shed late like that and he doesn't, the tines ain't weak. But I know back in 2020, he was the same way a little bit, not as much, and he broke all of his points off by the end of the year.
Wow. How old do you think he is?
He's for sure 6.5. I've got 3 sets of years of sheds to him. But his body this year doesn't look like it. His body looked big there, but he's also postured up. But he's not near the body size as he was last year. So I don't know what's going on with him there.
Yeah.
So it's just, and he's not doing, this is the least he's kind of been on the farm this year. Like I said, he usually shows up September and he's there. But this year here, he's doing things a little differently. He's been more on the south side of the farm too, where I've never had, very few pictures of him over there. And there's a draw that I had him up. The last picture I had of him September 22nd, he was up in a draw way out in the middle of these ag fields. So he may not, I didn't think he was wanting to be a part of the herd with him being in velvet. Something was wrong with him, but clearly not the case after having that encounter with him the other night.
Yeah. I mean, I've only ever had 2 bucks that here in Iowa that I can think of that carried velvet into season. One was early October, seemed to be normal after that. Then I've had one on the home farm that's just, I'm not sure it's not an antler doe. I'm not sure what's the matter with it. It's a 6-pointer that it'll be in November before it sheds. And I've picked up its shed antlers and they seem normal, but I mean, those cases are so rare. You got to think it's some kind of strange hormonal thing, but I don't know.
I tell you what, I hope I can find out and kill him and see what's going on with him.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's a big deer. He looks, doesn't look like an antler doe. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, man. When I saw that footage, it was like deja vu of the encounter you had in 22. Can't get the redneck open, self-filming. I got to think that you think that's where your best shot is on him in these coming weeks, or where would you call your shot?
So if as long as he doesn't break off, like I said, I'm going to continue to go after him. But I planted the bottoms last year. He was down there a lot, but I got to get a redneck down there because it's so hard to hunt because the wind swirls and it's only a 1 acre field. And like I said, I've got the wheat planted in there now. I just planted it last weekend. I had to broadcast it on top, and we haven't had rain in so long. We're extremely dry. Our green plots are, they're in bad shape. So as long as, if I don't get him in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a shot at him down in the bottoms because that's where he was at all last year during the rut. And I'm talking all hours of the day down there. It'd be 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. It's amazing I want to hunt down there this year. That's something I want to do. So maybe I will wait that long to either harvest him or another deer. But I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Well, that might be a good segue here. So you're talking about historical data on trail cams. I'd be interested on the take, Owen, Mike, Lee, anybody. How much, do you put stake-wise into those trail cam images from the past years? What are you looking for with those images? And how are you making, game plans based off of them?
Mike, fire away, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's huge. I think we've talked about this before, and I know most of the guys' opinions, I think, but you'll see these patterns when you get to know a deer and you got years of history with a deer and you look at where they were daylighting and what days of the year they were daylighting. It's amazing how you'll see a pattern. And, actually Ryan and I were sitting there looking back. I looked back at 22 and 21 and even went back to 20 about where DK was daylight on the farm in early October. And the only plot has ever been the plot we've been sitting, and I don't know, there's just a lot to say about those patterns, in my opinion.
We can't say that anymore.
It's true.
Yeah.
I guess it matters where you put food and where you put cameras, but
Yeah.
One question I kind of have off of that is somebody that's like new to Iowa and maybe has like 1 year of history on a farm. Where do you guys stand on basing your moves off of 1 year of history versus multiple years of history with a deer?
Man, I'd try it. If you got nothing else to go on, it's useful data.
I'm in that situation right now with that swoops deer. Like last year, the whole farm was beans, and this year it's corn. So we've got a lot more deer, congregating on the farm. But I mean, he's still showing, the exact same spots that he was last year. I mean, that was the first year that we ran cameras on it and just tried to get a beat on the farm. But he's just now starting to move into those scrapes that he was hitting in daylight last year. So fingers crossed for that. But
That's
yeah,
a good point, Drake. I mean, if you can keep your food the same, a lot of times they'll do the same thing from year to year, especially when you start to learn that history where he likes to be on that particular food. He'll do it same time year to year, same time of the season.
Well, what better segue then to dive into the Lochness monster and how you prep for the 23 season. I remember very distinctly when you and Mike found that shed antler, we walked down to that big oak tree and you started talking about your plan and you said you wanted to keep everything the exact same. You want to take it over from there in your thought processes, starting with the fact that you didn't really think that you were going to be hunting a deer of that caliber?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, because I was thinking about this earlier. A lot of the things that I do now, I don't even think about. It's just the way that I've learned to hunt. So it's just automatic. This is just what I do. But that's all based on trial and error, what's worked before and what hasn't. That's the reason that I do it, And so it was no different with that buck. It was the same with picket fence. I tried to keep everything the same, thinking he's going to do the same thing. And then they do, and it's just so cool to see when you can manipulate it like that and really get them to be in the same areas. It's just rewarding, because you go put the work in and then it actually works like that. You're like, oh my gosh, look at that, and it's not like you have them, to a confined space, but you've got them in the general same area. So that sure helps. If you're hunting a half mile from where he's at, obviously you don't have a very good chance, unless it's during the rut. But before I get too much into the story, though, I've got to just say thanks to everybody that's reached out. Got tons of emails, Facebook messages, text. I've never felt an outpouring of support like that before. Like you feel like everybody's rooting for you. It is such a humbling feeling. If you guys have ever had that before, I never have. And I'll be honest with you, I've actually shed tears a few times. I know I was choked up, Josh, when I was trying to do an interview there, and thank the people around me and the team around me is who I wanted to really credit. It's not the person, I don't think, but the people around them that really makes you successful. So it's been pretty humbling. And even I watched the main show, Josh, even what you said really was humbling. So thank you guys, everybody listening. So
yeah,
to get into the hunt, I mean, I thought it was really critical to get in early. I didn't want to bump a single deer because I even told Devin, I said, he might be bedded. Where he ended up, he was bedded because I had that as narrowed down to part of his core bedding area. I think he's living right here. Of course, you're always guessing a little bit, and so super important to get in early. We got in at like 2:30. I didn't want to bump anything because, it might mess it up right there. So we've got some time to kill. Nothing's moving real early. I know I told Lee this story, but to me, it's kind of amazing because I'm not a superstitious guy or anything, but so I'm scrolling Facebook for a minute, just killing some time. I come across a picture of my nephew's kids standing at my dad's gravestone. And he's got a big buck on his gravestone, and I told Devin, I was like, Devin, check this out, man. If this isn't something cool, I said, if we kill Lochness, I'll put another buck on the other side of that gravestone. I said, film this. This is really wild. And we no more and talked about that, and he filmed that, and we had some deer pop up. It wasn't long, and I looked up the hill to the left, and Lochness was just standing there, like somebody set him in the field. I was just like, what the? It was a wild thing because I'm not superstitious, and to have that happen like that was just really cool, And I don't know if any of you guys have ever had anything like that, but it was just neat to me. It's like, yeah, maybe things do happen for a reason. Maybe this was supposed to go this way, Like I said, I'm not a religious guy, but that was really neat. And, of course, you guys know that we're there, Lee and Josh. He came out there for a long time. He was out there, I don't know, half an hour. And, I was just smiling the whole time. I was eerily calm, really. And I'm just sitting there with this grin because there's no place I would rather be. I mean, there was nothing else I would want to be doing at that time, nothing else I would do, and I'm just sitting there grinning, watching him the whole time, putting binos on him. I got out my iPhone and videoed him for a minute, because I'm just in awe of this deer. Even though when you watch the video, you guys will see that a lot of the antlers taken away by the dark antlers, the velvet on the tines. I don't think you get a full appreciation in the trail pics or in the video of what that deer really is.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see that. Were you going to say something, Josh?
I was going to say, before we get to this kill shot point, I think it'd be cool if we could start at the main thing that maybe we didn't get to talk about this on video so much, but I know our text back and forth, biggest change for you going into the 23 season. It's a buck of a lifetime, and you choose to go back to checking trail cameras on an SD card. And I would like to talk through, as we went through October 1st and on, how much stress, anxiety, was it, what were you changing, on your strategy? And then talk about cold front hits. How are you, putting the pieces together? Because nobody's seen these hunts yet. Technically, we've seen some of the daily video blogs. But I want to use this as an opportunity to run, kind of what is Owen's brain? What's his thought process once you thought that this deer was gone? I have some video clips to share in here. I've got one of that first Lochness encounter we can play, and then I've also got a tease that we can play at the end of the daylight, the day that you killed him. But when did the front hit? It would have been the 6th was the first good weather day. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, that was the cold day, the cold windy day. Yeah.
So I think we talked on the 5th, and you were about as low could get. He's not here. I don't know what happened. I got to go check my cameras. Walk us through that. Let's start there.
Yeah. So for the people that don't know, I turned off the cutting link system, even though it's an awesome system. I went and turned off cell, and I went to just checking the SD cards because I just didn't want to have that real-time information. I wanted to make it a little more of a shock when he steps out. You don't know he's there, and that's exactly what really happened, in the end. But that was my reasoning for doing that. But then as we start to get into the season, I realized just how much for hunting a specific buck we rely on those cameras, having that information that day or that morning. And so it's driving me crazy. I'm not getting him on camera. I'm like, is he in the county? Did he get shot with a rifle? What is going on, And so it was really just so much fun, but it was driving me nuts. And I wouldn't know where he was for a couple of days. And I said, man, I got to go check a camera. I got to see if he's walked past that, And so I kept doing that, but I was avoiding that food plot, the brassica plot that I was avoiding those cameras for the most part because we didn't have a south wind right in there. And so I was checking them when the wind was right or what I thought was right for where he was bedding, you know. So I hadn't checked those, and it was driving me nuts. So that's a great point. and so much fun, though. And I thought I was going to learn something. We went in on the 6th, that cold day. And I said, man, I'm confident he's going to pop out. If he doesn't pop out today, he's somewhere else. And there again, that's not something that I just think about and make up. This is stuff that happens all the time. You know, all of a sudden you're not seeing a deer anymore. Most of the time he's not there. You know, he's moved, and it's nice that I've got a bigger farm. One farm's bigger. You can see them do that. You know, you knew where he was here on whatever given week, and then all of a sudden he shows up over here. And maybe he ruts there, or maybe he stays there for 2 weeks, you know. And a lot of times, I'm not saying always, sometimes they're still there and they're just not walking in front of your cameras. That happens too. But a lot of times they've just shifted a little bit and it's not that far, you know. So that was the reasoning. And like I said, it ended up being a lot of fun doing that because I did get the shock value when he stepped out.
Well, let's take a look at it. What were you thinking right here?
Oh, just surreal. I mean, you always think that, yeah, you're going to see him at some point, right? But then you're always in the back of your mind, are you really going to see him? Is it going to happen? Is he going to walk out? And so you're always just apprehensive if it'll actually happen. And then when he does, you're just freaking out. You know, you're like, there he is. And it was nice that I had those sheds from the year before too. So I knew what the deer was, you know, because if you're going off trail picks and stuff like that, it's easy to get fooled. But, you know, I knew how big he really was. So it was pretty exciting.
What did you think when he's walking away there? I mean, because how far is he before he runs? What did he run from?
Right. So, yeah, he's 55 yards right there. And, you know, I'm looking him over. I'm thinking about it. And I think I said that in the interview, you know. I'm thinking about that shot. But then not only is it a long shot, that's a pretty long shot to take because a deer can do a lot of things, you know. Even if you can make that shot, the deer can do a lot of things at 55 yards, right? So then the deciding factor on top of that is its low light. As I said in that interview, you know, the majority of the times I've made a bad shot has been in low light. When you can't pick a spot, you're aiming at a dark object, basically. You know, even though it was pretty good camera light, when you're looking through a peep sight, you can't see what you need to see to pick that shoulder out. You know, and so I just debated and I was like, nah, I'm not going to take that shot. I love to hunt anyway, so if I get to hunt another day for him, I'm not disappointed. You know, and so then he runs off like that, and then we look, and 2 deer, I don't know if they were spooked or they just ran across the creek and scared him, you know, just made a noise. And he just ran up the hill and looked back and seen it was more deer and just went right back to feeding. So he didn't go anywhere. And then I know I've told you, Josh, if you want to keep going, if you want to ask questions, I'm liking that. That works out good.
I was going to say. No, I mean, I think you just keep going through. Obviously, we're going to get to see this in the video, but, you know, we always talk about it in person, but one of the things I admire about how you approach life is you always pay attention to the small details. And that is one thing that, you know, I'm been lucky to be around some pretty consistent buck killers, a lot of them on this, you know, discussion right now. And there's one common trait. It's that they always pay attention to everything. And it's the things you wouldn't think of. And so, you know, here you are hunting this blind. Yes, you're playing the right wind direction. Yes, you have good access. But one of the things that struck me is why'd you choose to stay in the blind? Why is the blind placed where it is? You know, even as far as parking 2 different cars, you know, just run us through that thought process and then just lead right into the kill day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the day we go hunting, we park 2 cars. So I go park my truck where we have an exit. If we need to exit through the creek, we can exit out and get in that vehicle and drive back to our other vehicle that we walked in on. And so, you know, in hindsight, it played out perfect. You know, we thought ahead, like you said, just paying attention to the details. You never know if that'll work out. But, you know, again, blind placement on that, we backed it right up to the edge of a creek, and there's a steep bank there. And you're just thinking, well, will I ever need to use that? But what if you do? And this time happened to be the time that we did, you know. So he came out, he runs up the hill, and he feeds up there for a long time. It gets dark. And we looked later. It was actually like 45 minutes we stayed in the blind because I didn't want anything really close to the blind. When you try to get out, you're going to spook them for sure. So I wanted him to at least move off where there was some distance, even though it was pretty dark. And then once he did that, we went ahead and got out, and it wasn't 5 feet to the creek bank, and just dropped over into the creek and walked it out. And I told Devin, I said, we got out of there scot-free. Nothing bumped. I said, I'm sure Lochness didn't see us, didn't smell us. We're good. It's like we weren't here. If he doesn't know you were there, you weren't there, So I was pretty excited about that, knowing that tomorrow would be just as good of a chance or better, that we didn't bump him out. So, yeah, definitely that played big.
So you talk about tomorrow being better. What makes it better in your mind? I mean, I know skies cleared, higher pressure. What are the variables you're considering, when you say that?
Yeah, the day before when we actually did see him, but it was really late. I mean, I thought that day would be very good for movement as well. It was the high winds, I think, that actually had him move farther away from that food source. There's some deep ravines back in when you go farther back, and I think that's why he was so late getting there. And so the second day, would just being a bluebird day and everything just seemed to be perfect, the higher pressure. I really like that for movement. Because it was still cool, but it was warmer than the day before. So you would have thought the day before would have been the better day. I would have, outside of the wind being so strong.
October 7th arrives. For those wondering, that's the exact same day Justin encounters Velveeta. Owen goes back to the blind. This was what happens. We'll give you the teaser now. Looks a whole lot different time frame. That is just unreal. Unbelievable. What are you guys doing if you have a deer like that in front of you?
My biggest is 152, so
It's just hard to even appreciate the size of that animal. Getting to see the body in person, Owen, it doesn't even look remotely proportional.
Yeah, that's what I said. This is the first time I've ever seen a set of antlers make a body look small, versus the other way around. Like in Canada, you say the body makes the antlers small. But this one was reversed, I've never seen that before. So that's pretty
I can't
cool.
wait to see that deer in person. But I agree. Like, sort of the video and the trail camera, it's hard to appreciate. And I held those sheds in my hand last year. It was like, holy cow,
Yeah.
And it's so hard to appreciate the size of that animal. I mean, how does he compare to last year, you think, Owen, as far as frame? Is it pretty similar? Or?
He is pretty similar frame wise. Yeah, I would say almost identical, other than his fours are maybe just a little longer.
Yeah. What a beast, man.
Yeah. I think his mass is a lot better as far as overall mass. And
especially around the bases, Lee.
yeah,
I agree.
I think he carries it out well. But I'll tell you, being blessed to hunt a big deer before, it's just the anticipation that he's close. It's always just it's a different feeling when you're hunting that kind of a deer. You're excited, you're nervous, it's just every little, I don't know, you're on high alert at all times. And anyway, it's a different feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, I don't think you can convey that to people, how excited you are to be going hunting after a deer like that, There's no way to, really express how you feel, how excited you are, other than snapping once in a while with it. Yes, I'm fired up.
Dude, when I watched that, I was laughing pretty hard, because that's if there's no true testament of how excited you are, So it's October 7th. You got out of the blind clean the last night. Kind of talked about why you think this deer might be bedded closer. You alluded to it earlier. You went in early. What time did you head in? Why did you choose that time? One thing that people are going to see in the video that maybe might not necessarily confuse them, but is your access. You're not using that creek. Like me as a viewer, I'd wonder, why don't you go in the same way you went out? Use that to your advantage. What is the thought process going in the way that you did? I'll let you explain it, but I think that'd be interesting to note.
Yeah, yep. And so we go in super early because I don't want to bump a deer, because I figure he could be bedded close to that food source. If you bump one deer, you might domino everything back, and then who knows if he comes out or when. And so we go in really early, and it's all open. So there's really no deer out in the fields, and it's just field access, and I'm screened, by topography. You really can't see. And then when you get down farther, you got cedars all around. So nothing can see you getting in there. So if you go through the creek, you actually have to go through some good bedding area, which is great for going out because the deer are gone then, but going in, you're going to bump deer probably going in. And so it makes more sense just to go in the wide open way, getting in there, and then to exit, for an evening hunt than to walk the creek back out. So, yeah, that was the kicker to getting in there early, and why I think that's a good strategy. The one downside to that is if you're walking across the plot or something like that, you could be laying a scent trail to, for them to pick up. And it only takes one doe going berserk on you to ruin the whole hunt, as you guys know, it happened to us all 1,000 times, right? But being meticulous, like you said before, Josh, is paying attention to every little detail. Being meticulous about my boots and my pant legs and all that is really critical in that scenario where you're going to cut across the plot. If you lay a scent trail there, you'll see we had does and some small bucks come from that area that cut our track and never picked up on us. And that's one thing that I seen really change things when I first came out here, and I didn't pay as much attention to that. We would have does track us to our tree stand all the time. And that's where you have, doe population control comes into effect, but it happens. But, once we started changing that and just being meticulous about the boots, you don't wear them to the gas station and all that kind of stuff, and we spray them down in every hunt. And you'll watch, cut our track all the time and never think anything of it. And if they do, maybe they can smell something, but it's not alarming to them, So I think that's critical.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember back all the way 2018 when I met you and hunted with you the first time. One thing I'd noticed that was different than any other person I had gone hunting with was almost every stand you have is accessible by something, either a mowed trail, but it's always cleared. You're not touching any sort of vegetation. This hunt's pretty much the same. You even got those paths, through the turnip plots, probably leading right to the blind, just to lower that vegetation. I mean, when you watch, hunting shows, there's so many things that you can pick up on that maybe aren't talked about, and they end up making the biggest difference. Walk us through the rest of the hunt. I mean, I guess, do you guys have any questions before we get through? I mean, I really want to talk about when the deer stepped out, obviously, run us through your thought process on that one.
Well, I love when you pick up on that detail, Josh, because a lot of times I don't even think about that stuff anymore because, like I said, it's just the way I've wired my brain to think about this is just how you do it. So a lot of times I don't even think about it because that's what I do all the time. And so when you, make note of it, like, this is interesting that you do it that way. That helps me like, oh yeah, okay, there is a reason we do it. We just have done it that way for a long time, So, but yeah, if any of you guys have any questions, fire away.
I guess when you got in there early that day, well, both days, you got 2:30, you got access to 2:30 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That was to prevent any more does being on the plot when you got there?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Just figured everything would still be bedded, which was critical too, because the day we actually kill them, if you come lollygagging around there at 4:30, 4:45, you run him out of the field, So
which is typical at this time of the year, not to get that too late in the afternoon. You think you walked past him though? On that?
No, I didn't, because we had a topography. Like I said, there's a hill right there, beans and cedars and stuff, so they can't see you walking down on that side hill. Yeah, and I leave hay bales up there closer to the road too. Just help hide your access up that way, so nothing can spot you.
This probably goes back a ways, Owen, but when you set that plot up, did you set that plot up specifically?
Oh, yeah.
What were you thinking when you did that?
Just did the shape, or are you talking about
together, like the way your access? Did you take all that into account as you put it together?
Yeah, because all of this stuff every property starts with an aerial, and how am I going to access this? How am I going to get into it, and then how am I going to get out of it? It's sometimes you sacrifice some access sometimes for an area that's just really good, and you just say, well, I won't hunt it that much, but you go take your one or two shots in there, might be all you need. But normally I always have an excellent entry and excellent exit to get in and out of these. So yeah, I mean, just go back to that question. It always starts with an aerial, and I map it all out and just sit there for hours sometimes. I know Josh and I have done that kind of stuff before too, and it's just fun to do for me because you're always strategizing every day of the year. At least I am, I know you guys are too, and it's just a fun thing to do to me.
I'll pull up a overview of that, and we can kind of showcase that access. I'm exporting it right now. But Mike, talking about the River Farm DK, is there any parallels to the thought processes with food plots? I mean, I know that farm has obviously transformed over the years from the first year you hunted it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the river farm frustrates me a lot of times because of, one, it's flat, right? There's no topography, and it's like way different than the home farm. That topography can help you hide entry and exit so much. So I've got this flat grass field, and then it's bordered by the river, and I think if I had the time and the energy to deal with a boat, it might open the door a little bit. But generally speaking, I'm running out of work trying to get down there to get in the blind with just enough time to get in the stand. And yeah, I think sometimes it's not ideal out there, but certainly in the situations where, I mean, again, I'm trying to get in and out clean. We're always trying to think about the best way. Where right now I'm strategizing just for one deer, which is different. Like, okay, where is he bedding? And the whole farm is a bedding area. So you go in there and there's freaking deer everywhere. You never know where you're going to spook them. And I mean, I don't know, Ryan hears me mumbling under my breath quite a bit as we walk to the stand sometimes, but
I think the cool thing about the river farm, Mike, and something that I noticed is like you don't access every stand the same way every time. Like sometimes it's wind dependent, putting the wind in your face, or like last year we were hunting Kelsey on Copperhead, specifically the what we call the Poseidon set. Now, I mean the access to that stand like you completely changed versus when we hunted it my intern year. I think it's kind of interesting. You're always thinking about which way is the best based on the conditions or based on the time of year, all those things.
yeah, and it's changed too because some of the sloughs and they were dry. That changes, I mean, patterns. And I mean, I'm still learning that place. It's and it started out. It was you basically have 150 acres of huntable ground there when we first started it. So it's not like it's a gigantic place, but it's been interesting. It's fun. Um, and I do think, there's a lot of visual barrier to walking in, and so of course I'm very careful doing a lot of things like Owen's talking about. Keep lanes mowed, vegetation short, try to get in and out of stuff without touching stuff, and think about where your deer are. And it's interesting. I've got a plot that, every day the deer are in there at 3 o'clock right now, and it's like comical. It's like it's right next to the bedding area, and it sounds like it's similar to this one, where if I had a buck visiting that plot and I didn't get in there super super early, I mean you'd be running deer out of there, when you go in there. Now that's not most of my plots, but there's one in particular that, man, we go to the plot we've been hunting him on, and we've got pictures coming in from the other plot that those are just out there feeding, and it's interesting to know obviously proximity to bedding area and what the deer activity is like out there. They feel real comfortable daylighting in it, and how that might affect what you're doing.
It's slightly different food too, so that is kind of interesting as well.
I can't tell you 100 that when you're in the tree, you're not thinking, what can I do different next year?
Right.
That's all you think about is how can I make this place better? Or especially on a slow hunt, you're like, man, we need to do this next year.
Yeah.
I think that's just our mindsets. We're trying to make it better every year. That's the fun part.
Yeah. Or what do I do better for the next hunt?
That's true. So that's always going through your mind. So.
Yeah. So talking about food, Rye, it's going back circle to Lochness. I'm going to pull up an aerial here, the drone shot. This is going to be kind of just a straight looking down, Owen. You got the green plot, you got the alfalfa strip. Walk us through. I mean, you talked about earlier wanting to keep the place the exact same, right? When we were talking about the sheds back in the spring. Well, you had alfalfa on the bottom, and then you changed something. Walk us through that change on that top left plot right there.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to keep similar food sources, corn, soybeans where you had it, and then I did move the one alfalfa down there to the bottom right. That's alfalfa because I wanted to hold him right there during the summer. I think it's so critical if you can keep them in the same area in the summer, they don't have to go anywhere and they're still going to be there in the fall. Whereas if you don't, some guys have some different philosophies on that. It just, let them go eat wherever in the summer and they'll be back in the fall. And sometimes they do come back. Well, other times they don't. So I'd rather have the one where they're there all year, They never have to leave. They don't have to go to beans somewhere else or alfalfa, which are your two main food sources. So I just think that's critical. And then, putting the monster buck down there where I did, I thought that was potential I knew it was in his area from last year. There was potential right there that he would use that field, So that was the strategy there for going into the season, especially if we got a frost and alfalfa started to go dormant. They're not going to be hitting it as hard, even though they'll come back to it and hit it in the winter and all that. But having something lush and green, right now is critical. So I thought that was an option right there.
I know you talked about one of the surprises you had was what they were feeding on. Again, going back to the details, you told me you were watching exactly what plants they're going through. You want to talk about the mix you planted, what they were feeding on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a food plot nut, everything deer, and so I analyze every little detail. Every deer that would come out, I would glass and try and figure out what she was feeding on. I know that's kind of weird to people, but I'm a weirdo, all right. But probably 90% of what they were feeding on was purple top turnips, which I thought was interesting. I thought the radish would be a little more popular in the soybeans, and they were feeding on that stuff too. I mean, they were hitting all the mix pretty good, which, as you alluded to, Josh, there was alfalfa there, crimson clover, there was kale, purple top, radish, soybeans, if I didn't say that. That's what was there. And then I also put clover in for next year. So, coming into next year, that's already going to be clover. And then I can decide later in the fall if I want to kill that and then put more brassicas in or whatever. But yeah, that's what's there. And obviously, I was a little surprised with the purple top because that's always been awesome late season. I come back to the turnips and smash them. So little surprised to see that. So maybe the drought did help with something, because if you look, the purple tops are bite sized. They're like a radish, the size of a radish, and they're just grabbing them one after another. It's crazy to see.
Well, run us through the kill night. Give us some teasers for this upcoming episode. I know we're all anxious to see it, but I think one thing would be really cool to share is just when that deer stepped out, what was going through your mind. To know the practice, you talked about you were cool as a cucumber and it surprised you, but really it doesn't surprise me considering how much you shot all year. Like you visualized this moment, this is, you said how many years in the making?
That's exactly right. Exactly right, Josh. I mean, I prepared so much throughout the year. I shot tournaments all over the state. I went to ASAs. Everything that could put you under the most pressure, that's where I wanted to be. And if you guys have never shot an ASA, when you step up to that first stake and all your peers are watching you, that's pressure. I mean, it's like having a 200-inch deer out there. I mean, if you care about how you score, I mean, some people, maybe it's not as much pressure, but for me, you care about where you finish and you want to shoot better than you did the last time, So that was the mindset going into it when he stepped out. I wasn't surprised to see him, as I was confident that day he was going to be there. I was surprised to see him that early, though. I will say that. That was shocking to me that he was there that early. Because, you got to remember the night before, it was 10 minutes till dark. So I'm expecting something late again. And he steps out there at, I don't know, it was like 4:50 maybe. It was somewhere in there. It wasn't even 5 o'clock. And I'm thinking, with it being this early, I'm calm and I'm happy and I'm just smiling, taking this in, because in my mind, like you said, with the preparation I had for the day, I don't feel like he's making it out of here alive, honestly. And I don't mean that to be arrogant. I hope nobody takes it that way. But I just had that much confidence. I'm just smiling, going, this is really bad for Lochness and it's really good for me, when you're that calm, because we've all been there. When you got a big deer in front of you, you start losing your nerve, you're liable to hit the trigger before you're on him or anything, And so I felt pretty good about it. I'm like, just got to give me an opportunity, man. And he was there that early. I said, there's a good chance of it. And then, we watched him feed for the longest time, 25, 30 minutes. Got all that just stellar footage of him just grabbing, purple top after purple top and radish here and there. And so cool. And then finally, there was a 2.5-year-old buck that had come out from the east, and like talked about the area where he would cut our track and all that. He'd come from that way. We'd filmed him earlier. And when Lochness seen the other buck, he was, starting to work toward Lochness. When he seen that other buck, he was having no part of it, and this is what I call a king buck in these areas. They get to a certain age and dominance, and they own these areas. If there's other bucks in there, they will submit or you're going to fight, that's the way it goes. And so cool to see as soon as he seen that other deer. And, and I seen this last year just to make a point with Wide 9 as well. he moved into his pocket, and that's where you'd find him, and he was dominant there. And that's why Wide Nine was where he was at, and where Lochness was where he was at. They used to be together, and apparently at some point in time, Wide Nine said no, no more. And he was the dominant buck, and he suppressed Lochness over to his area, and then later he became the man. So that was super cool to see when he seen that other buck. Ears went straight back, and I know we've got some cool footage of that and trail cam stuff and whatnot. But he just started his march, and he was right toward us. And so at that point, my heart starts to thump a little bit. Yeah, you got all the confidence and everything, but you got a deer that size walking in, your heart's thumping. I don't care who you are.
Guess we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah.
They show.
Yeah. Miles Keller, Mark Lakoski. I think anybody's going to be having their heart thumping in that moment, So, yeah. And so here he comes. I know this is about to happen, and things got kind of hairy. You want me to go into what actually happened, Josh? That
Whatever
you
you
can't,
want, man. Absolutely.
that you can't
Give
see.
the people a tease so they want to see it next week. Because
Yeah. I mean, what was interesting, some of the stuff we got, my view compared to Devons View was totally different. As you guys know, that film together, sometimes that view is way different. So he's coming in, for me, he's just wide open. I'm like, this is going to be stellar footage. I'm loving it. He gets in, he starts to walk this other buck off, and he just walks around. He's, getting downwind of him, staring him down, wondering if he wants a piece of him. I love that interaction, all the, stuff they do, social behavior and stuff. But at any rate, he starts to walk him off, and the other buck is just like, no thanks. I would imagine if you're another deer and you see that kind of headgear, you're just like, no, I'm good. So it was pretty cool to see. And then so he just left him alone after that, and he walked our way just a little bit farther and grabbed a radish. But you can't. We didn't get to part the interaction with the two bucks there because, like I was starting to say, Devin was between windows right there, and he wasn't able to get that. Of course, I witnessed all that, and I thought it was so cool to see that interaction. But so he left him alone, and then he just started to walk to my right. Well, as he does that, Devin's in the same window as me, and all of a sudden panic mode hits because I'm like, I got a broadside shot. I'm going to take it, He's like, I can't see. He was like, we got to get the window, and he wasn't freaking out. I don't want to say that. I don't want to make him look bad. He did an awesome job, but he did what he should have, calling me off. It's like, I can't see through the window. And so he said, yeah, we got to do something different here. And I'm like, can you slide over, where I'm at? Can you look through right here? So I thought he finally did that. I thought we were good. And I went ahead and drew back on him, ranged him and drew back. And luckily, Devin ran out of room. He had to switch to a window that we should have had clean, or we should have had open, really, being that we try to pay attention to all the details. That's something we let slip that we shouldn't have. That should have been clean. But he switched to that, and, you'll see in the footage that there's some spots there, but still awesome, man. He is just teed up perfect, just like you want. I even noticed that he's chewing on either a radish or a purple top, and I'm like, this is perfect. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I can't hear, because as you're worried about on a longer shot, if he ducks, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. It's not a super long shot. It was 41, just over 41 yards. So it's still a pretty good poke to where they could do a lot of things. Drop, spin, whatever. But he's chonking on some lettuce there, so I feel pretty good. He's not going to hear anything, and he just stands like a statue there.
You're the only person I know that would think in the moment that a 200 plus inch deer, he's chomping on lettuce. This is the right moment.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till he starts chomping.
Yeah, that's so funny. Analyze everything, but yeah, he didn't drop because that was a concern on a little bit longer shot. He didn't move at all. And of course, I was a little concerned when we went back and watched the footage. I watched him run off, and I felt really good about it initially. But you know how the doubts always creep in. We've all been there. You're like, did I make a great shot or didn't I? I felt good when he ran off. I'm like, we got our deer. And we came back and we put it on the computer. And then I wasn't sure I was in love with it at first. I'm like, did I get into that shoulder? The front shoulder. And I was able to stop it in just the right place where I looked like I was just left of it, right where you want to be tight against it. I was like, that hit the far shoulder. So that's a good thing. That just missed that near shoulder, hit the far shoulder. I said, and then we watched it farther on, and he runs up the hill and he starts curling heavy to the left. And of course, I'm like, I think he's curling heavy because that's about it. I think he's going to be laying right there. And we go to do the interview, after we waited for the guys to show up and everything. And I say that very thing. I'm like, he's curling hard left. I don't think he even made it up to the beans. And he didn't. He was another 25 yards from where the video stopped. And, of course, you don't know that when we do the recovery, but he didn't go far at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's always a lot of telltale signs. First off, all the, great things that videoing hunts can do from the memory bank and those types of things. But I don't think we ever talk enough about the information we get post shot and maybe what we take for granted, being able to break it down frame by frame. One of the things we talked about was that tail was tucked. It wasn't flicking. He was doing that dead run. You could see that pressurized blood. That was some of the most fascinating things I learned, from Mark Drury, was just like how much you can learn in that first 5 to 10 seconds after an arrow hits, based on body language. And frankly, if you make the right or wrong decision, it can influence whether you recover the deer. Obviously, as people are going to see, perfect shot. I mean, what did it end up being was it double lung?
It was. Yep. Could have been. I wanted to be maybe 2 inches lower, but that's the perfectionist in me. It was ended up being a good shot, double lunged. So.
Yeah, I remember when we started the track job, it was awful stinky on the bottom of that hill.
The what was at the bottom of the hill?
When we were standing there, I could smell him.
Yeah, I remember that too. You're like, I smell him already. And of course, I'm getting pretty excited now. I'm like, that's where we thought he was. That's where he's at. So yeah, that was fun when you start smelling him. You can't see him yet.
What a great feeling. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, you're close then.
Yeah, no, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, man. You waited, the biggest deer of your life. Some of us, Chuck, one of your best friends, drove 3 hours. I thought that was, the deer was awesome. Don't get me wrong. But I think what I'll remember most from that night was just getting to share it with the group that we did, and you talked about it the next day, but I think, we can end this with, what it meant to you, that perspective you had the next day.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I know I told you guys that I've never tracked a deer with a group of guys like that. And all the years I hunted, it was always just a kind of a lone wolf guy, and then you got maybe one friend with you, maybe your dad's with you or whatever, I've never been with a group like that. And that was probably the coolest thing that I've ever been a part of, man.
Yeah. Well, I was there, and the coolest thing was the deer. All the camaraderie was great, but the deer was still the highlight. I don't care what y'all say.
Yeah, you're not lying. I mean, when you get up to the deer.
I like all y'all guys, but it was big deer.
Lee's elbowing people out of the way to get his hands on them.
Yeah. But I mean, I've got every trail photo of the past 3 years on that deer with you sent me, and then even the that's the first time I've seen that footage was tonight. It does not do the deer justice whatsoever.
No.
Once y'all see him at the Classic, if the fans can come see him, next year. I mean, the pictures do the deer more justice than the video for sure.
Yeah, we've got a lot of comments on tonight's episode actually of like people, because I dropped on the episode just like, there's some things you'd like to see, for next week's show. And one common thing was like people were like not questioning, but curious as to like, is this deer really that big compared to crabs, compared to wide nine, et cetera? Mm-hmm. And it's like, having got to see all these deer in person, it's not even close. Like from a photography standpoint, I've never struggled to take a good photo of a deer more. I mean, it's just, he is the most here. You know what? We'll see if people want to watch the podcast. If you made it this far, we'll reward.
A little treat. I can't wait to see him in person.
He's just so tall. He comes off the main beam so high. It's an irregular shaped frame.
Well, his tines are like melting too. They curl in. I mean, you can't look at them any way but straight on. I mean, look from the side, you don't see anything. And
I bet as the G2 comes off for probably 20 inches before the first G2 comes off. Then you got not 10 inches at main beam after that. It just comes off so high.
That's just insane.
I mean, he's got 90 inches right there with spread and main beams almost.
Yeah, mind-boggling to see him in person. It really is. I mean, I had a pretty good idea what he was, and I was still blown away. Remember you telling me that you got to come around here and look at the front of him, because I walked up behind him, picked him up. I walked around. I was like, oh my gosh, what did we do? That thing looks crazy.
Oh, that's so awesome, man. So many years of just dreaming and working and just putting it in.
And
Awesome.
even passing him at 5 last year, it took some,
Yeah.
it took some guts, and he just didn't quite do what he thought he would do. I mean,
Especially with the doubt, with the hematoma and the early shedding, and what if he dies? I mean, it's just so much to it. And being someone that is of a similar mentality, it's like it's a roll of the dice. It's stressful. It's pretty cool.
I really thought he was dead, Mike.
I know it, man.
Yeah.
I know. I remember picking up his shed, being like, "Well, this is cool."
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a story about Owen right quick too. I'll get back to his detail of how detailed he is. What was that? 2020 Owen that we had EHD or whatever, 18. But
19, I think.
19, yeah. So that year after that, I don't know if it was Lochness or if it was crabs. I think crabs was 4. And he found a shed buck that was dead. He went and got the sheds and see if the pedicles would fit in that shed buck to see if it was him. He'd already shed. He picked the sheds up, then found a shed buck later on.
Oh, dang.
So he sees like, oh, I think it's him. So he grabs the pedicles and it's not him. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit into
Doesn't match.
the square peg round, round hole kind of deal. So
I love it.
Exactly. Yeah, that is a little nuts, but I love following these deer so much, man. It meant everything to me. It's like I've got to know if that deer's alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's. Go ahead, Mike.
How many years of sheds do you have off of them?
3 years of that one.
3 years,
Yeah.
man.
3.5, 4.5, and 5.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let me get this pulled up here for everybody that wants to see this photo, because I think that this is probably the best showcase of that animal.
Golly.
I mean, and even then, it just doesn't do perspective. I really hope that, for those that get to attend the Iowa Deer Classic, we can have that deer with us there. I mean, it's just the buck of a lifetime. And, we talk about it all the time. One of my favorite things about Midwest Whitetail and this team that we have assembled is just, even on this podcast, if you think about the difference in, Mike, Owen, and Lee, I talk about this all the time. They chase the dream. They're living the dream. And it's not like it was handed to them. I mean, we read some of these comments and it makes me laugh, and it makes me disappointed for some folks to not have had the opportunity to get to know you guys, because it's like, it's really easy outside looking in to say the must be nice mentality. You hear that all the time. There's not 3 people I know that deserve it more from a hard work perspective, paying attention to all those details. Myself, Drake, Rye, Justin. I mean, Justin, obviously you guys have property, but I know Drake, myself, and Rye, we're dreaming about getting to be in your shoes one day. And so I know I just appreciate, stories like this. They're fun to tell to the viewers, but they're also so dang inspirational. I can't wait till someday, hopefully, have a wall. Like, Lee, you're not in the right room for the wall. You got the wall.
my boys are in the room. So anyway, I will. Yeah. I think it's something innate in us that God gives us. We want to own dirt. I mean, it's something that drives a man to own a piece of ground, whether it's for cattle, for a homestead, whatever it may be. But I just, there's a pride factor that there's also just something to work towards and improve, So
There's something special about when you put all that work in to get that land, and then you're able to follow those deer and then one day harvest it, that you don't understand when you hunt public ground. And public ground hunting is a lot of fun. I've done a lot of that in my life too when I was young, and that's where I learned to love hunting and love whitetails, So that's an awesome way to hunt too. But there's a side of, ownership, land ownership, and following the dream and following the deer that's just rewarding when you get that deer that people probably don't understand.
Well, I hope everybody gets the chance to. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's another thing I was going to say too, Josh, is, there's really no place for jealousy amongst our group, the whole industry. It's like, if somebody else shoots a great deer, buck of a lifetime, I'm going to be the first guy to shake your hand, man. I'm happy for you genuinely, because I'm going to put enough work in. I'm going to get my share of them, and all of us are going to do that, and I want you to be successful as well. So I hope people feel that, the genuine, sincere nature that all of us have, toward other guys, other hunters.
Absolutely. Well, anybody else got some closing words? I know we got some good weather on the horizon, not necessarily in the next few days, but it's been great action so far this season. I know everybody on here is hunting a pretty dang good deer, minus me. So
Yeah, right.
Whatever.
oh, hey, we saw him the opening day, and that's about it. So
What a great start to October, you know.
Seriously.
Man, great, cool weather, awesome encounters, fun to be out. Congratulations to Owen. So happy for you, man.
Thanks,
I'm
Mike.
sad I won't be out for the next week. I'll be following along for everybody. And, man, here we are. We're going to be into mid to late October before we know it. So,
we got good news tonight. Sounds like Andy Melton's son shot a really nice buck after a tough decision, last night. Made the right one. Seems like it paid off. So be on the lookout for the next podcast here. We'll go through that conversation with Andy and his son. And just appreciate everybody joining. As always, you can find Midwest Whitetail episodes on the Daily Channel, Midwest Whitetail Regional Channel, Midwest Whitetail Main Show. So that is all we got. Can't wait to see the story get put together for next Monday's episode, Owen, and I hope we can do it justice, man. So
You guys always do, man. Show today blew me away. Really
Proud of
did.
you, Owen. Nice job, Owen. Well deserved.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Congrats,
buddy.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
good luck to everybody out there next time you hit the woods. And as always, we appreciate you taking the time to watch.